My name is Kate Sample. I am with Pessy Publishing and a clinician as well. And I'm super excited because we have yet another wonderful resource with our wonderful author here, Dr. Seth Gillihan. Welcome, Seth.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me. I'm excited too. I saw the flip chart for the first time just a couple days ago, and we got our author copies, and it's always nice to see the final thing.
Yes, absolutely. So if you don't know about Seth and his work, you should, because he is fantastic, a very talented CBT clinician who has written a lot of different resources for us. And we're focusing on the kids ones today. So I just want to point out he's got the CBT deck for kids and teens. And this one has been so helpful for so many clinicians across the globe that we thought, hey, let's move on and do something new with Seth, which is how we got to the flip chart for kids. So Seth, do you want to kind of walk us through the chart, how it works, the features, why you wrote it, and all the good stuff so people can know what it's all about and how it will help?
Yeah, great. Great. So this is actually the second flip chart that we've made. The first one was just the CBT flip chart. It was intended for adults, maybe adolescents, older teens. And I think some people, actually, I know some people were using it with their younger clients,
Mhm.
with kids, because it is just, it's a very kind of clean, straightforward presentation of the material. But, um, but kids and adults are, well, kids aren't just little adults. So we wanted something that was more tailored for them, and also really tailored for the issues that therapists are running into, in working with clients and working with their youngest clients. I mean, just on a personal note, as I've been a therapist for, gosh, over 20 years, and um, and it really wasn't until the second half of my of those years that I realized just how challenging the kind of day in, day out work of therapy
Mhm.
was for us as therapists. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the work is incredibly meaningful, and but also equally probably challenging. And
Mhm.
um, there's so much demand now, and so anyway, all that to say, I've been extra kind of invested in creating resources for therapists that hopefully can make their work easier and more effective. So there's this, and as you can see at the bottom here, it's written by me with my daughter, Faye Gillihan. So
Yes.
she's 8, and she's she actually loved the CBT deck for kids. She would pull out cards and like put them at our places at the table and say, here's a card
Well,
for mom, for dad, for everyone to use. And
I
so
love that.
it seemed like a fun thing, and also helpful to work with Faye, to make sure that the language felt like it was really hitting it, and
Mhm.
wasn't what I imagined a child would say, but to be like, oh, that's not really something kids say in 2023. So she was an extremely helpful collaborator with coming up with ideas, and thinking
Mhm.
about how to make it more interesting, clarifying some things that might have seemed clear, but to her, she's like, well, I think it might work better if such and such, and writing is one of her very favorite things to do. So it was also a great collaboration. So
I love that.
so with that, I mean, it is a flip chart, so it's got this stand built in, so it opens up and it sits flat, and then there are glossy pages that face the client, that face the child, and then there are matte pages, black and white, that are on the reverse. So they are copies of the front image. Almost. They're different though in that they add extra information. So you've got very basic ideas on the front to introduce concepts, and then the therapist can look at the backside and elaborate on things. So getting into the part on research, take a closer look at it. Is the thought definitely true? And on the back, they can see it says, write down what you were thinking. What is the evidence for and against it?
Mhm.
So that's the setup throughout. So that's a general introduction. One more thing I'll say is the first part of it introduces the general concepts, like how to work with thoughts. The cognitive techniques. Then we get into more of the behavioral approaches. So, like, this is exposure therapy, facing your fears. In this case, a tiger, probably not an actual tiger in real life, because we don't want to face things that are actually dangerous.
Right.
And a section on the basics of mindful presence. And then the second half is clinical applications. So, finding it hard to focus, um, struggling to get homework done. So as I thought about what to work on, one option would have been OCD, depression, anxiety. But I wanted this to really feel like it was geared to kids who were looking at it. And so I thought, instead of, what are common problems that kids and clinicians are dealing with? So,
Mhm.
getting homework done, feeling anxious around other people, instead of social anxiety.
Yes.
Worrying about getting sick. It's a common concern, and obviously a relevant one, especially after this, all the illness these past few years. Feeling unhappy about doing chores, or a pain point for kids and parents. So,
Yes.
so that's the basics, and there's more to say, but I'll turn it
No.
over to you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It was a great walkthrough of how it works and what you can do with it. The what's kind of neat about it is that the glossy pages are actually dry erase surface, so you can use them over and over with clients. But to your point about pointing out problems, that's one of the things I loved about this when we were conceptualizing it, is that you didn't want to take the clinical route. You didn't want to say social anxiety disorder, OCD, panic disorder. You wanted to say perfectionism, boredom, chores, the things that kids are actually facing and actually do have to overcome, using CBT strategies. So I just think it makes it that much more accessible. In general, whenever I think about these flip charts, so when I was practicing, I used a lot of CBT with kids because it works quite well. And I had a whiteboard in my office, or I was carrying a clipboard around, or whatever it may be. And thoughts, feelings, behavior triangle,
Right.
right? And so you write it again and you apply it to your client, and then you talk about it and you go back. And so what's nice about having the flip chart is that you can use the same resources over and over again, because a lot of therapy is doing the same thing 8 times a day, depending on, who you're seeing. But in CBT in general, what what do you find is the most helpful for kids when using CBT? So the topic of this talk is kind of like the challenges of it. And what do you think is most helpful about CBT for kids?
Mm. Well, I think a lot of it is, what's most helpful for adults, which is, taking a
Mhm.
big, what can feel like a big confusing mess of an experience, when I'm all bound up emotionally, and my mind doesn't seem to be working with me, and I'm struggling to meet my goals, or I'm held back from doing certain things by anxiety and fear. And so just taking that kind of jumble of things and breaking it down into components, that alone I find can be really helpful in just starting to, all right. I mean, it's a core tenet of CBT: break things down, and then they're more
Mhm.
manageable. Something
Yeah.
that feels like it's too much is usually just too big, and so we can break it into
Mhm.
smaller
Mhm.
parts. So that's,
Mhm.
exactly what we try to do with what you were describing, that, the CBT triangle. That is really, the kind of foundation for so much of
Yeah.
this. So we've got, this one of the very first pages is thoughts, feelings, actions. So understanding those three parts, how they relate to each other. I agree. I mean, I think whiteboards are a fairly standard issue for a lot of CBT therapists. And you do find yourself writing, your sixth CBT triangle of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's created here. There are images that can, make it more engaging for kids. Being able to write things in can be helpful. You can write in here, what's the situation? So what happened? Um, I can show you my. This was sitting out on uh, a table in our house, and some young people apparently vandalized it.
Oh, look at that.
Yep.
They got right in
They
there.
wrote it all in. So this is being present during activities, and there are different ways to do that: see, hear, feel, taste, smell. So engaging with senses, for example. They
Mhm.
wrote in the names of various characters from shows they've watched or games they played. Apparently, this is Doug, Raya, Alex, and Ben. I recognize some of them from The Descendants. And then
There you
activities.
go.
What's that?
The Descendants, yeah.
Yes. And then activities to practice. So you could write in anything here. They've written in different activities for different members of the family. So apparently Faye's going to play a game. Ada's going to learn French. And Dad's going to eat a meal. That's all right. It worked out for
Oh,
me. Yeah.
that did work out for you.
And then I won't mess up their work, um, but then yeah, you can write, you can circle things. Kids can write in their answers to really, make it more
Mhm.
interactive for them, so they participate, and then erases cleanly, so you can do it again with your next session.
I love that. Anytime I think you can make something concrete for kids based on obviously their brain development and developmental level, it just brings that message home even more. And the interactive piece of that and the work you do in general, I think just speaks volumes and emphasizes, what kids can learn from cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah,
And I think anytime we can make it visual, make it interactive, it's that much more helpful for kids. Because you're right, it's not usually, you said it's not usually too big. No, it's not
not
too
too much. It's just too big.
too much. Not too much. It's just too big. And
Yeah.
CBT helps break that down. I love that. I'm gonna have to write that down and use it with my daughter too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think I've also
yeah.
said it. It's not too hard. When something feels too hard, it's usually too big, like a task.
Yeah, I really like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I wanted one more thing I want to say, Kate, about
No,
your question about what's most helpful is that it's hard to know what's going to be most helpful for any one person, and it's often not what we think it was or think it's going to be. I remember in
yeah.
working with adults and asking them at the end of their treatment course, what was most helpful to you, and if it was anxiety treatment, maybe imagining it was going to be the exposure we did or working through some of their fearful
Mhm.
thoughts. But sometimes people would say, like, well, I think it was those breathing exercises we did in the beginning. And the way we were presenting the therapy is more like, here's some breathing you can do that might be, kind of like a helpful side thing. But the real treatment is this other stuff. And you
Mhm.
don't know, so for some young people, they're going to find that, like, just learning that the breath is always their friend they can come back to is kind of a stable
Mhm.
place. Some kids are really going to
Mhm.
resonate with that. For other kids, it's realizing, like, oh, my mind plays these tricks sometimes, and it tells me
Yes.
that I can, look into a crystal ball and see the future, but I can't actually, tell these fortunes.
Mhm.
Or for others, it's going to be like, I was afraid of that thing, but I didn't think it was. I knew it probably wasn't really dangerous, and then I did it, and then I did it some more, and now I'm not really afraid of it. And that's, like, I mean, obviously a lesson for life. We can all continue to use that kind of thing. So it'll vary, but we'll break it down and find out what works for each person.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I just think, CBT is just one of those ways that helps break that down in really concrete ways
Yeah.
and kids can make, better assessment of what's going on and um, hopefully make better choices for themselves. But then also, like you said, I mean, these are lifelong skills. These aren't just getting over a hump of one thing. I mean, learning how to tame your thoughts and think about your thoughts is a skill in and of itself. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just recognizing, like, oh, my mind is telling me these stories. That is,
Mhm.
whether you're a kid or you're an adult, just
Yes.
sort of seeing through that. There's real freedom in recognizing that your mind is making stuff up, and it might be true and it might not be true. So I don't have to just take it as,
Mhm.
take it at face value all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. My brother says to me, if I'm having a bad day or he'll say, it's just one of those days where you shouldn't believe your thoughts. Just get through the day, and
Yes.
just, whatever it may be that's going on, just don't believe your thoughts, start again tomorrow, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And it's true, it's very
it
powerful.
is. Yeah, yeah, that's nice too.
Mhm.
Yeah, to just sort of set that as a, like almost like a guardrail for the day. Like,
Yes.
I'm not gonna veer out of my lane today because I know there's that bumper there saying, like, nope, nope, that's not that's a false lead. You don't have to believe
Yes.
that. I've done similar things with, knowing that I'm tired, or that I'm my stress
Mhm.
level, and realizing, like, the things I'm gonna think I need to say to my kids today, for example, are probably not gonna be helpful. So I can,
Right.
sort of temper some of those automatic impulses.
Yeah. Yeah. And just kind of a not today, maybe tomorrow,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe another time.
Yeah. We'll come back to that.
Um, Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Seth. We obviously love working with you. We love the products that you create with us. We know it's helping so many people, clinicians and kids alike, and families feel better. And that's the crux of what we do, and it's important work. So, if you're interested in Seth's chart with us or any of his other products with us for CBT, there's a QR code there, and then also a link at the bottom here that you can find it at pessy.com. But thank you, Seth. I'm sure we'll be doing this again soon, as we do have a workbook coming out soon, well, next year sometime, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again. So thank
Yes.
you so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate. Thank you. I love working with Pessy. I love our collaborations. And I think that all that you do, you and your team do on the back end, really, I think you're the usually unsung heroes of all this work. So thank you for all your efforts.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. All right, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.